Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast.
Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the privilege of Mark Edwards, the MD of Whiteboard Strategies, in the house. How are we doing, Mark?
Super, pleased to meet you.
Or as I like to call you here, the Welsh Wizard.
Well, oddly enough, you wouldn't be the first. I get quite a lot of emails with people who sign off or greet me with that moniker. I've never proclaimed it. It's never been something that I've put out there on business cards, believe you me, or even said. But a few people have maybe come to a similar assumption. I don't know. I really don't know why.
Well, thanks for coming on. Now, I know we've been speaking on and off for months now, like almost the whole of COVID, and we were going to do a show last year. But I think the show that we're going to do today is going to be pretty relevant because we've had a period of time where virtual selling has been forced on us.
Yes.
The last 12 months. But I think there's a lot of people that are still really struggling with it. And obviously your strategies around whiteboards. Now, the first one I wanted to kick off with you straight away is the whiteboard dead? Are we not going to have whiteboard selling now? Are we just going to get people on virtual selling strategies?
Well, as you would understand, I had to ask myself a similar question last year, where after, since 2009, I was in sales training from the mid-90s, from 1996 onwards, traditional consultative selling skills, a kind of broad-based solution selling, account planning, negotiation skills, proposal writing. And then in 2009, I happened upon an idea, a Whiteboard Strategies idea, which I'd done much of my training. I'd realized that delivering by PowerPoint in front of a group of salespeople in particular, a lot of them would kind of switch off. But if I turned the slides off, went to either a whiteboard or in a training room, a flip chart is commonly used. And if I started drawing things up on the whiteboard instead, I would capture their attention, 100% of it. So I then realized that there was an opportunity with tech companies to help them develop two things: propositions that could be delivered on a whiteboard. So a presentation that isn't in a slide format, but is basically drawn up and illustrated on a whiteboard. But also not only design that for them, but then teach the salespeople to have the skill and the competency to get up and deliver a presentation and deliver their insights and their ideas and their propositions on their feet to a customer. And I took that to some of my old customers back in 2009, and they took to it like a duck to water. And from 2009 onwards, I've traveled the world and elsewhere delivering, I said, those two things: creating propositions that companies can deliver at a whiteboard, and then training salespeople. And as I said, I've been all over the world doing that. So you can imagine the shock to the system when last year, all of a sudden, and I was due, by the way, last year's schedule of events, April the 1st, which is my birthday. I was due to be in Rome last year with AWS on April the 1st, which was great. Oddly enough, at 57 years of age, I've been all over the place, but I've never been to Rome. I was really looking forward to that. But you remember, Rome was basically ground zero for COVID. If you remember Italy at the beginning of all of this. And then I was due out later on that month, again with Microsoft, out in Seattle, just at the time that the US was shutting everything down. So one of those projects was basically postponed, pushed back. And the other one, we basically reverted to doing it online. But it was a major concern of mine as to how practical is it going to be? What is going to happen to the whiteboard? What's going to meeting rooms? That's where whiteboards are. Have pretty much all been kind of sellotaped up. There's nobody in there. There's no customer meetings, or haven't been very many customer meetings. So I had to make a bit of a transition at that point to helping organizations deliver the propositions online. So I would, the last year, the realization was that if you don't have the whiteboard, if you can't make your way over to the whiteboard and deliver your message there, you've got to do it at your desktop. Then screen share was the new whiteboard. And we've done some major projects with companies where we've helped develop whiteboard style propositions that they can deliver from a desktop using Zoom, Teams, Blue Jeans, Chime, any of the other platforms that are out there. But it's interesting if we think now about where is it going to. Listen, I don't get any kicks out of driving 30,000 miles a year. And I've never counted the air miles that I've done. I just count the Avios points when I've been flying here, there, and everywhere. But I've had my fill. I don't know, but you know what I mean? We've been through, us, excuse the term, you're probably a bit younger, but us boomers who've been out there a long time, we've really been kind of road warriors, and we moved from being road warriors to being air travel warriors. I'm glad that those days have probably come to an end. I think it's going to be more of a hybrid situation going forwards. There's going to be more meetings which weren't necessarily done or shouldn't have been done face-to-face, which for habit reasons probably were done face-to-face before. I think a lot of those are going to go online. But we're going to get back in. We're going to see customers. I put a post on LinkedIn the other day. I don't know if you've come across the term Lindy. Have you ever heard it's Lindy, Lindy? It's called the Lindy Effect. And the Lindy Effect it was around, I believe it originated in the US in a conversation in a breakfast bar where two people in show business were talking about, why certain Broadway shows survived 40, 50 years and other ones opened and closed 8 days later. Do you know what I mean? So in the UK, remember, we've got, is it The Mousetrap, I think is the longest running stage play of all time. And on TV, you've got soap operas. The ones that just go on and on and on and on and on and on and on are what they call Lindy. So if they're Lindy, these are the type of things that, and the longer they go on, the more likely it is they will go on. Yeah. So, and I would see the whiteboard, if you think about it, is probably one of the oldest pieces of office technology that we have. It's been around. I think the original whiteboards, flip charts were used, by the way, for sales training back at NCR, back at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. I got photographs of the original sales trainers delivering training to a group of salespeople where it's all on kind of flip chart. They didn't have whiteboards. They didn't have the technology necessarily at that time. But when they were introduced in the 1950s, they've been there ever since. And I've always said they are the greatest piece of persuasion technology known to man. I could live without one because you can do things on paper as well, can't you? You can do things on paper, flip chart, but I'm a visual thinker. I don't know about you, a visual thinker, a visual communicator. I like to stand at the whiteboard and kind of jot up either ideas or what it is that I'm presenting. And so I think, the whiteboard is Lindy when we get back into the workplace. And I think it's going to be a healthier workplace because I don't think there's going to be as many people in the office. Probably people are going to be working 2 days at home, 3 days in. Meetings, I don't know. I think we're going to respect and honor people's time a little bit more than perhaps we did in the past. And we're going to make more. We're going to get greater value of the time that we spend together. So I'm sure that the whiteboard is going to come roaring back. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just basically been sitting there waiting for our return. So I'm very confident. And as I said, I've just picked up another new contract for a new project starting in April for that quarter, and that is pure old school whiteboard. So,
would you say, Mark, then whiteboard, for training is perfect, but are you selling actually whiteboard for actually going in and selling to a customer?
In and selling.
What if they haven't got a whiteboard when you go and see them?
Right. Well, when was the last time you went into a corporate office? Because my feeling here, and it is borne out by experience, is that whiteboards are everywhere. And if you consider, particularly, as I said, listen, my whiteboarding services I don't sell them to, and they would have no interest in the pharmaceutical industry, for instance. Reason being is that when a salesperson goes in to see a GP or anybody within a hospital, they're not actually allowed to deliver a message that hasn't been ratified, verified, printed up, documented, because of the nature of what it is that they're talking about. Within the healthcare community, they're kind of locked down. They have to use printed materials and so on. Elsewhere in tech, and consider the IT department, a CTO, a CIO, a CISO, any of these people, they typically will, I would say most of them are going to be in their 40s or more. There's probably younger CIOs out there now as well. But look, what did they study in university? They're all graduates. Most of them are graduates. I'm not a graduate. I was a dropout ultimately, but again, a computer science dropout. But these people learned computer science, mathematics, maybe engineering, very visual subjects. If you've seen a network topology, any diagram of any organization, even the worldwide IT infrastructure of an organization could ultimately be scaled down and put onto a single sheet of A4 paper, or more practically in an office environment when you're talking with the team, drawn up on a whiteboard. So I would say that the whiteboard is there in 95%. And if you go into somebody's office, by the way, Mark, if you go into their office and they've got a whiteboard on the wall, they're kind of saying, I am a visual communicator, I am a visual thinker. What we're saying is, if the salesperson is in there, leverage that piece of technology, learn to use that piece of technology, pick up a pen, ask for permission to go to the whiteboard, stand at the whiteboard, and then say to the customer, look, let me kind of illustrate my thinking here. Let me show you how things are now, the challenges, and let me now show you how they could be, how they should be. And it's in some form of technical drawing. IT is very, very technical, but we can do propositions that don't have to be infrastructure or software solution based. You can do all sorts of propositions. Anything, I suppose, if you think about it in recruitment, if it's a case of taking a customer's corporate recruitment process from here, here's where you are, it's done this way, here are the problems, here are the implications, here's the consequences. Wouldn't you prefer it if we were here? And if you can kind of illustrate that in some way, even if that's all that is, Mark, is you saying the letter A is here in a circle and B is here, there's a gap. And drawing that out is hugely beneficial. I mean, the training room, a little bit different. As a trainer, whiteboard isn't the weapon of choice. As a trainer, I would say it's flip chart. Because if you're spending, listen, we used to do 2-day training courses. Those had gone. If I go back 25 years, believe it or not, we used to do week-long training courses in country house hotels. Do you remember those days?
Yeah.
And a flip chart basically records everything. So you're writing on it, you turn the page, you could come in the beginning and the next day, let's look at what we did yesterday and bring it all back. You can't do that on a whiteboard. You know what I mean? You clean your whiteboard off and you move on. But for propositions, presentations, brainstorming in a customer office, so not only in the CIO's office itself, but in most meeting rooms, particularly in tech companies. Listen, I got an article from the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago saying that Silicon Valley had basically pledged allegiance to the whiteboard because the whiteboard was so influential with tech companies, with how they. And did you ever watch Silicon Valley, the sitcom? There's a great. You've got to check it out, man. I think it's HBO. But if you check that out, it's like a startup. It's like a Facebook type startup organization. But if you see there, it's flip charts everywhere. It's whiteboards everywhere. That's how a lot of programmers, how a lot of coders basically develop their skills and how they work with one another. And the other one is Scrum. I don't know what they call it. It's a form of project management where a development team, DevOps people, will get together at the beginning of the day in front of a whiteboard. The team lead, they're all on their feet. They're not allowed to sit down. They're all on their feet. They're there, I think, for like 15 minutes, start to finish. And they basically go through who's doing what, who's covering what. And it's all done on the whiteboard. I think is whiteboard and kind of post-it type things. Do you know what I mean? They're putting post-its on the board. Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And then at the end of the day, they come back and they review what they did. So as I said, the whiteboard being the central tool. So it's particularly within the tech arena, and it's perhaps I'm drawn to it because I would regard myself as a visual thinker and a visual communicator, and I think that does come from the fact that I did computer studies O-level, starting in 1978. So in 1978, we did Cecil programming, and we had kind of stencils. So this was you learned to solve problems with flowcharts, which is a visual representation of, some problem or a visual representation of how you would go about solving it. And I said, that's why, particularly in the tech arena, particularly in technology, these people are very, very visual with regards to how they think. And if you want to communicate, you want to get an idea straight into the back of their heads, best way to do it, I would suggest, verbally and visually. I'm not suggesting we go in there and try and do it in silence, just drawing it up. It's the combination of the two things. So you're leveraging the customer's ear and ultimately their eyeballs as well to get into here and hopefully get your point across. That's what we want to try and do.
So would you say there's a specific art to selling over a whiteboard or using it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's I say, for some people, it's as natural as duck to water. Okay, if you look at some people with their moleskin notebooks, if you look in their notebooks, you'll just see it's not just prose. It's not just written word. It's boxes, squares, maybe doodlers. Perhaps would be a good example of the kind of person that perhaps feels the need to kind of have some way of illustrating their thinking. But it is a technique, and it's not for everybody. Not for everybody, because there is also a performance element to it. But that's also why it works as well as it does. I can sit here. I mean, I'm trying to whiteboard in midair here with you at the moment. I have the technology. We have the technology for me to do a screen share and to kind of show you. I can do it on my desktop here virtually, or it can be done on the whiteboard. There's a performance element to it, because listen, a lot of people don't like public speaking. A lot of people don't like getting up in front of others and speaking. Yeah, again, I did many years of presentation skills training. I've seen what presentation, just simple presentations, can do to some people. It's very challenging for a number of people. So getting up and delivering a proposition on a whiteboard has two challenges. One, how comfortable are you on your feet? Because you basically, through the sheer act of getting up, you're drawing attention to yourself. And then also, are you just going to improvise and make things up on the whiteboard, or do you know what it is that you're going to draw? And I would suggest, although I can do it both ways, but that's through my experience in this area of over, let's say, 20 odd years of sales training, 10 years or more of just whiteboarding. Plus, I'm a performer from the dim and distant past. I don't know if you can just about see in the corner over there.
Yeah.
So I'm a guitarist as well. I mean, I didn't work hard in school. I was just growing my hair because I was convinced that I was destined for rock superstardom.
Brilliant.
It didn't happen. I had the chops, but I didn't really have the looks, and maybe the temperament, whatever. It didn't work out. The band broke up, and that went away. And I migrated at that point, as I said, dropped out of a computer studies HND course at that time, dropped out and took my first job selling musical instruments in a small retail outlet. As it's often the case, most people who get into sales, you could say we fall into it or we fail into it. We probably wanted to be something else, and that didn't quite work out, and we took an alternate route, and all of a sudden we might find ourselves, next thing you know, you're sitting in front of a customer, blue suit, white shirt, red tie, with keys to a BMW, and you're selling some high value, complex IT solution, and you do it very well, thank you very much, because it's a brilliant job. That's for sure. But as I said, if you're a performer, and Mark, you've got to be a performer. Again, you're many people find it difficult to be on a webcam. You're turning into you're becoming as ubiquitous as Rylan on TV. Do you know what I mean? It's like when I turn on LinkedIn, it up comes Mark there again. So you're comfortable with it. Not everybody is, and you will have seen that, I suppose. Some people just aren't good for it. So in which case, I've also had to come to the conclusion that if somebody's not comfortable in delivering a proposition at the whiteboard, okay. But what I'd like, we can show them how it would be drawn out on the whiteboard. But listen, if they want to do it sitting down side by side with the customer, on a piece of paper, which they're very comfortable doing. There's no salespeople out there that aren't, they were all comfortable sitting with a customer. Yeah, that's the base level of comfort. Standing up at a whiteboard, probably going to be a bit of a dropout. But if they're prepared to sit with a customer and do it in a moleskin notebook, brilliant. The beauty is also, if the illustration, if the diagram that you're using on here is powerful enough and persuasive enough, you can even do it, and simple enough, you could even do it on the back of a napkin. And there are examples out there. Southwest Airlines is a classic example. It's a business school case study in the US of a simple diagram of 3 points of locations in the Southwest. I can't remember, Texas, Fort Worth, I think, and Austin and one other location. 3 locations linked up. Supposedly, the apocryphal tale is that the original founder in a bar, on the back of a napkin, drew it out. And there's examples of it. If you search online for kind of Southwest Airlines beer mat or back of a napkin, you'll see the stuff come up there. So I'm comfortable. I'm not into forcing somebody on their feet at a whiteboard if they're not comfortable doing it. I think that's an awful thing to do. You know what I mean? It's just, if it's going to make somebody nervous and anxious, then it's not for them. Don't do it. But the proposition, the idea, the concept of delivering the proposition, the message, visually and verbally at the same time, just transition it from there, do it sitting down, do it on a piece of paper, do it in a moleskin notebook, or do it on the back of a napkin. So,
do you think that's the best way of selling? Do you think that's the best way of presenting an idea to someone?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I can't think of anything better. I mean, just to try and do it with the power of words, you know, and that can be done. If you were to go back into the dim, distant past, Cicero would have been, you know, as a rhetorician is probably the word. He would be able to do it. And listen, maybe some salespeople can do it as well. But I don't think there's many salespeople on a Monday morning that are that persuasive with their language that they could deliver a proposition purely verbally. They're not all like Stephen Fry. He could probably do it. But for many salespeople, particularly in a technical environment here, Mark, there's some things you can't explain with just words. You've got to have a diagram.
Yeah.
Are you a football fan? I don't know. Are you?
Yeah, Arsenal fan for my sins.
So, but again, you'll know 442. Okay, and perhaps if you've ever in a bar tried to explain to somebody else what it was that, you know, how Thierry Henry, you know, crossed the ball in, or sorry, Perez might have crossed it in, and Henry was on the end of it. You can see my age here, going back a little while, but oftentimes, and I think, you know, they'd be there. You might be doing it with salt and pepper sellers on a bar. He did this. He did this. If you tried to describe it just using words, there's a high likelihood that they're going to get the wrong end of the stick. So diagrams is critical. It's just a way of, as I said, for many of us, of taking something complex and making it not only simple, but actually very easy to replicate and to deliver as well. And the IT industry is built on it.
Would you say, obviously, people are going out and doing whiteboard strategies maybe before in face-to-face. Now they can't do that. Would you say that the external salesperson's dead now? It's got to, everyone's had to start learning to sell over video. They might not like it. Most people
No, that's right. That's right. That's right.
They've had to adapt. Do you think that there's going to be a new type of salesperson recruited? And also, do you think that there's going to be potentially the death of the external?
I would say the death of the external. No, there will always be a place for the, because in many respects the territory salesman is you know, is like a diplomat, is an ambassador. You sent them. You'd be remiss if you think you could conduct your diplomacy remotely when your competitors are going out and meeting people, you know what I mean? And maybe opening an embassy in situ. So there will be a place, and there should be. There will be territory salespeople, but I think the numbers are going to shift. I think the numbers are going to transition. I think I had a conversation with somebody who was on a training program that I ran about 10 years ago. He lives out in Sweden, is kind of top sales director for a tech company out there, but he felt he had a newfound respect for inside sales having done this, because he was territory sales. Territory sales typically got paid multiples more than an inside sales person. And the reality is, when we all went virtual, we're all inside salespeople now. And he had a newfound respect for it. And so I think that maybe some of the old school field salespeople maybe will have found it difficult to move onto a virtual platform, and maybe some of them will, of a certain age, they're probably coming to the end of their sales careers anyway. I'm 57 this week, so I'm talking about people similar to myself. even if they were to go to full retirement age, there's only another 10 years there for them as salespeople per se. So I do think there's going to be a shift in the numbers. If we're going hybrid in terms of how many days in the office, how many days at home, I think a sales force will now be able to rejig the numbers, reduce the number of field salespeople, because a field salesperson, listen, it's typically 1 meeting a day, 3 days a week, probably. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because if you have a meeting with a customer, if you take a meeting if I took a meeting at 12 o'clock in Reading, I'm living in Letchworth, my entire morning has gone, really. I've got to make sure I'm there. I might be able to do something en route to it, but more than likely, the morning has gone, getting ready, getting in the car, driving there. Absolutely. You have your meeting, and then you're coming back. Your day's gone. Well, you can do now, and I have got in my schedule, I've got, there are some days when it's got, I've got this afternoon, I've got this meeting here with you. I've then got I've got a Zoom call, a Teams call. Teams seems to be more popular with my clients. Teams call with a client updating on a project at 4 o'clock today. He's in Brighton, but then 5 o'clock, it's a US-based, I think it's an audio podcast that we're doing, but again with a client. But so how could you ever? You just could not have physically got from here, there to everywhere. So there's going to be a change. That mix, I think, is going to shift. It's not going to be perfect for everybody. Some people are going to struggle with it. Some people are going to I really only want to go and see a customer. Some people are very uncomfortable with online. They're probably going to struggle in the new way of working going forwards. If you'll excuse the phrase, the new normal is going to be a mix between face-to-face and virtual. And I think that gives us the best of both worlds. By the way, I don't know if you saw, there's a McKinsey's report that came out last year giving some pretty amazing statistics regarding B2B buyers. B2B buyers love virtual meetings.
Really?
Surprise, surprise. It looks like they don't actually want salespeople in their office for an hour at a time. They're preferring maybe the half-hour session. You know what I mean? We might want to do the niceties and to get to know a customer and whatever. But so it's seriously, Mark, it's about 73% say that they prefer this way of working, and it's again high 60s. So the options for them are they prefer virtual over face-to-face, and actually it looks like they would prefer to be able to just go on and buy stuff self-service over and above even virtual. If they could buy the service without talking to you,
they would.
Even virtually, they would. And there are examples again on that McKinsey, so they're showing out there are sales of over $1 million being done that way. It just means that the customer knows what it is they want. They know what they want. They don't even want to enter into a virtual conversation about it. If they can buy it online, they do it that way.
So Mark, what if you were going to give, if people were going to be retrained they've been an external salesperson, they need to be retrained, what's your sort of top tips, and to sort of say when you get them on the virtual meeting, how they can present themselves if they haven't got the whiteboard in the room, or how they can do it virtually?
Again, if they don't have the whiteboard, have you ever done a screen share on Channel Chat?
No, I haven't.
Well, can we give it a go then? Because in as much as I just want to see, because I don't know what this app is that we're using. What's this called? It's not Zoom. It's not Teams. It's basically it's a specific.
You can if you hit the right hand.
There is a button, isn't there? That's right. Okay. So watch out. If you'll see me, I'm looking confused because I'm working on two screens. Screen here, a screen there in front of me, which is what you're on. But of course, my computer thinks that the screen is over here. So my eyeballs are going in one direction and my mouse is going in another one. I think I've got what I need. All right. So what are you seeing now? You got it?
Yeah.
Doesn't that feel better? It feels a lot better to me. All right. So bearing in mind what I've got here.
That's it. I can even put it to there. That's it.
What's happened there now then? Hang on a sec. So what you've got here, I'm using, believe it or not, PowerPoint. or perhaps you should believe it. But the reality is, you know, I can do all sorts of things on here. So let me just, so to the point you made, what's the new skill that salespeople need to have? They need to be able to whiteboard online. Okay, they need to be able to turn the screen share into an executive briefing center or a meeting room, and so they need to be able to go in there and draw online to express themselves. So if I can go back to a point we talked about earlier when you said about who has whiteboards in their office, and this is something that I will often draw up. I say, look at the typical CIO, CTO, CISO, and so on, okay? They're gonna be, yes, there are young ones out there in certain startups, but in reality, they're 40 plus years of age, kind of middle age in some respects, and they are graduates, okay? What would they have studied? They didn't do geography or French or English literature. As I said, they did mathematics, they did computer science, and so on. So the reality is, if you consider the mind of the CIO or CTO, how they think, how they work, when they moved into that kind of STEM, science and technology arena back in their teenage years, they were introduced to flowcharts. This is what I mentioned a little earlier, yeah? So this is how they learned to really look at problems, how to resolve problems. It's a combination of logic and visuals. They also typically like Gantt charts. So a Gantt chart, I don't know if you use any Gantt charts, Mark. It's a kind of, a Gantt chart, you could basically take an entire project like the Olympic Games and put it onto a single sheet of A4 paper showing timelines and dependencies, okay? That would be a very high level one. And also consider that, you know, how many times would you go into a company office, particularly in, let's say, a telco or in a tech vendor, and there's some kind of cloud-based diagram on their office, on their walls, you know what I mean, where it's kind of the head offices, where their AWS services are, where whatever goes on. So these are visual thinkers and visual communicators. And as I said, if you really want to get your point across to this type of person, to a CTO, to a CIO, to a CISO, then stop trying to talk them into an understanding, but combine what you're saying with a visual. And particularly, I will go back to that other point. If you walk into their office and on their office wall, behind them is a whiteboard, that says that they are a visual thinker and a visual communicator. So ask for permission, pick up a pen and go and use it. Now, if we're not going into the customer's office, if we're having to do everything virtually, what we need to be able to do is what I'm doing here. You need to be able to use the screen share to introduce this plain basic tablet. As I said, there's other applications out there. There's things called Miro. Just trying to think of something. Well, there's Microsoft Whiteboard as well, which is very good. But believe it or not, I find PowerPoint of all the easiest thing to kind of deal with here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Can I show you another little trick, Mark? Can I show you a visual trick? So just to show you the power of visuals here, because again, it sounds to me as if you don't see yourself as a visual thinker. Whiteboarding isn't something that perhaps you've done much of. You probably have used it in the past. You might have done kind of swim lanes or whatever, but I just want to show you the power of visual communication. So a little story. I did some work in the US a few years ago, and the organization where I was working, I was there for a day, and I kept on, at my age, I have to take bathroom breaks pretty regularly. One of the signs of a man of kind of, you know, of my years. And so every time I went to the loo, I had to ask for they hadn't given me a pass, so I had to ask for the 4-digit PIN. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To get back in.
Yeah.
And as I said, after about my third visit, I just kind of went to the reception. I was saying, it's ruining the experience for me, really. Every time I go in there, I'm having to try and remember the 4-digit PIN because I got that many 4-digit PINs. But the receptionist said, it's easy, do this. And on a post-it, drew this out. So can you tell what I'm drawing here? It's the keypad, yeah? I'm going to leave out the extra line down the bottom with a hashtag and the 0. It's a keypad, yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got it?
Yeah.
But having drawn that out, the receptionist said, easy to remember, it's this. Okay, it's this.
Yeah.
So give me that number, Mark.
4578.
Think again.
Oh, sorry, 87.
Okay, super. All right, now then. So guarantee you, I don't know how good you are at 4-digit pins. Most of us. Have you ever found yourself when you go to a party and you're introduced to somebody and you forget their name the moment they've told you what their name is? It's gone. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you're like with passwords. I bet you're as terrible as most people are with passwords. I got a variation. I use I better not even say actually. Certainly in this format. But 4-digit pins probably disappeared. But what's that 4-digit pin?
Yeah.
What is it? Do you remember it?
4576. 87.
Brilliant, fantastic. And to do it, you're not remembering the number. You're remembering the picture.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, you've now got effectively a key in your head to get back to that number. So that visual just shows how, as I said, it's connecting with a part of your brain, the visual systems, not just what you're hearing. It's basically putting stuff in through your eyeballs as well, and it's going straight into the back of your head. So you will find at the end of today, if I was to ask you again, what is that number, you'd be able to maybe pause, just think about it, and you'd be able to reconstruct it based on what you saw.
Yeah.
It's probably the case, or I hope it is, that many people that will watch this, because that's an example that I've used for a number of years. There'll be quite a few people at the moment I went into that story, they'll say, I know exactly where he's going with this. So I would say, from what you're saying, you don't even use screen share, do you?
No, not really. No. No, I don't know. If I'm studying over virtual platform, it is just talking. You only use a screen share, yeah.
But recruitment has often, or you probably say, it is very much a game of communications. It's you trying to explain things. But if you're communicating, I don't know, is it more sales within the IT community rather than technical, isn't it? You're not recruiting CISOs and so on. If it's sales, but even then, I would suggest that if you wanted to be able to, if I can just kind of, I got to try work my mouse out again here. If I can go back to,
well, I think Mark, I think a lot of it is just the adoption of it. Not being trained on how to use the.
I know. Well, look, here's an offer for you now. More than happy to show you what to do here. Gratis, just one person doing it. A Welsh wizard to an. I don't know what I'd call you. I don't know what the English. We'll call you a wizard as well. The recruit. You're the. Just got to be careful of my words here. But what you could do in recruitment, I would say there's all sorts of things you could do. You could say, look, this is the process that we go through. We do this, then we do that. Yeah, then we do this.
And this
you know what I mean? I would suggest, well, you could either, I'm doing this on PowerPoint. Is that so, this is not rocket science. Listen, I got a friend who's a rocket scientist. I've shown him this and he said, it's not rocket science. All right. So, but you could do recruitment along these lines. You could also, and I would, if I was in your game, I would even potentially, if I was trying to articulate and explain a character to maybe a customer of yours, you say, because I do that. This is something I often do kind of a customer profile. I say, this is my typical customer. And you could do something similar with a recruit. I say, my typical customer is Barry. Barry is a sales director. Yeah, I'm going to say it's either a telco, or an IT organization. He's 50 years of age, which is pretty good because we kind of get on. We've got similar life experiences, kids in university, so on and so forth. And Barry has got a sales force, let's say, of blue suit, white shirt, red tie, BMW driving salespeople. This is very old school now, isn't it? But he's got a sales force of, let's say, 100 people, or maybe he's got 1,000 salespeople. I would then add to it and say, let me tell you a bit more about Barry. Barry drives a black 5 Series BMW. Although saying that again, it's a bit dated. It's probably a black Range Rover now, or maybe a 911. He's made in his 50s. He's beginning to wonder what to do with all of the cash that he's made. As a hobby, probably maybe a mammal. Do you know what I mean by a mammal? You know, the middle-aged man in Lycra. He does kind of Iron Man. Likes to do a bit of Iron Man, and so on. And lastly, there's a person on his desk. If you go into his office, he's got a picture of him with, you know, those two guys from MasterChef. Because Barry was a contestant on MasterChef about 15 years ago. He only got through the first round, but it's one of his proudest moments. But I will, and then I'll say, well, what are Barry's issues? Barry's issues are sales targets. Barry's issues are pipeline development. Barry's issues are sales qualification. Barry's issues are slippage, you know, deals that were due to come in that don't come in. All right. So again, many people watching this who've been in a room with me when I've delivered whiteboard training will have seen this time and time again. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to personalize. I could have talked about Barry, but if I'd have just talked about Barry and not drawn Barry up, I don't know how much of it would be retained. You know what I mean? How much of it would stick with you. But you could do a similar thing where you could say, look, here's the candidate. Here's Jeff or Jane, the candidate that we've talked about. What can I tell you about them? Okay, well, they're 35 years of age. They are what I would call a star kind of account manager. They've got 10 years field experience with that's, you know, either it's a CC or Softcat or whoever. And I would add to it this side being professional skills and competency, but I would say additional to that, they, you know, whatever they are, you could say they manage a kids football team. They do some charity, you know, they do some service or charity as work elsewhere. And maybe, as I said, oh, by the way, and just happens to be a kind of, you know, a grade 8 violinist at the same time. You know, there's you can broaden out the nature of the candidate, for instance, and you could do something similarly with the candidate when you're talking about the organization that you're selling them into. Yeah, you know, so here's the company, you know, whatever, ABC Co. Yeah, and the person that you're dealing with, by the way, you know, the sales director, the person who's recruiting. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Well, this is so and so. This is and they've been working there for the last 4 years. Or actually, I see a lot of them online now. It might be if they're sales director, they've been there 14 years. A lot of people I'm seeing have worked their way through from a ground floor sales job over a long period of time to get their way to the top. But you could do something similar here. And my feeling is it's for you to dispute or to disprove in many respects. But I would suggest that way of presenting, on top of the way that you verbally present, if you can get to the point where you're not having to think about what you're drawing, you're just speaking and you're drawing automatically, it can only add.
Yeah, you got to be a good drawer, though, haven't you?
No, not at all. Again, if I was to, and I'm going to do the screen share, I'm sure we've got to be. I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but let me just make this point because of what you just said. If we were to show this to anybody, what would they be able to make out? They might be able to say, oh, actually, that's a number 35.
Yeah.
That's a number 8. Yeah, they might do Jeff. I don't think they'd say Jane, all right?
No.
But you tell me what I said. That was their age. What's this? What did I say?
A-star account manager,
Super.
CC or cat.
Don't know if what did I say? Because here I got a bit flaky as well in many respects, because this is a diagram I've not drawn before.
They manage
a football team. Manage a football team.
Don't know what that was.
Charity, do a bit of charity. Yeah. And this last one?
I don't know. Can't remember. Grade 8 violin.
Thank you very much. Okay, so... You know, it's all those years of you sitting in front of the TV watching. There's one good one. There's bad ones. The bad one's Rolf Harris, I suppose, isn't it? But can you tell what this is yet? Can you tell what this is? There was another. It was Art Attack. You're probably more Art Attack. You're of that age.
Art Attack, yeah.
Or vision on. I don't know if you remember that. But again, if you do remember those things, Mark, you know, that as a young child growing up, particularly in this country, okay, they probably had similar things, or no, they did in the US, and they would have had the same in other countries and continents. Your visual cortex, in many respects, was also being developed. When Tony Hart was drawing something, you were having to follow it and work out and predict what's coming next and so on. So the whiteboard, I have no science behind this, but I would suggest we are able to leverage that type of thinking that's been there with you for a long time. Because I mentioned earlier about the IT director learning his STEM subjects when as a teenager and maybe going into college or university, but we would have learned drawing and we would have watched Take Heart and all of those things at a much earlier age. Some of the first things we do as children, drawing. Yeah, you know, so it's an element of just kind of picking up on that and then moving it forward. As I said, for your line of work, you really could be, I think we could be doing processes. I think online with a customer, you could say, you know, if you really, can I give one more? Here's one for you. And I give a name check on this one if I can. When I said I worked in a music shop in Swansea many years ago, worked for a guy called Richard Allison. Richard passed away last year, unfortunately. Was due to have bypass surgery, but was cancelled because of COVID. And he passed away in his early 60s. But I was one day working in the music shop, and a guy walked in, and this is where I get the term blue suit, white shirt, red tie, BMW driving sales guy. He was a rank Xerox salesman, Richard's brother-in-law, a guy called Steve Dawes. Steve Dawes is still out there in the tech community today. Very, very long-standing, veteran sales guy. Started at Xerox back in the late 70s, early 80s, which is probably like having an apprenticeship at Arsenal or Man U. Do you know what I mean? That's like how to start in sales, and he's still out there now. But one thing that I remember him saying, it's a technique that they would use in early photocopier sales. I think it's called the Ben Franklin strategy, but it's no more than basically drawing a line down a sheet of paper and asking for the pros and cons. Yeah. But even if you were to do that, as you may do verbally with a customer, just say, okay, so you're teetering on, you're not sure whether to go one way or the other about this candidate. Let's list through what are the positives. Do you know what I mean? And you list okay, so yeah, they're strong in this area, great, super. What else do you think? Well, in this other area, you like that about them, you like this about them, so on. What are the cons? Yeah, they might say, well, I'm a bit iffy about experience or whatever, or they had a short period of time while working elsewhere or whatever. And then now that you've got that out on paper, you've really got the opportunity to take those and either mitigate, or resolve them, I should say. So, you know, there's some way to, and it's done on paper. It's being done, and it'll be easier for you to deal with it this way. So as I said, that as an example, again, could be used in recruitment. I take my hat off. That's a tip from Steve Dawes from many years ago to me. But sorry.
I was going to say, are you using, when you're doing this presentation on PowerPoint, are you using a pen when you're doing it? Yes,
of course I am.
Yeah.
So again, the kit. All right.
Yeah. This is that.
Right. Well, so
what kit do you need to be successfully selling over a PowerPoint like you've done?
Right. Well, it's two things, because the reality is, you said you could say, what kit do you need? Because most people have got most of the kit anyway. Okay, you got most of the kit regardless. So the kit also is just one part of it. It's a little bit like saying, well, if you give me a football and an Arsenal top, you know, I've got the kit, I got the ball, I got the jersey. I can even put number 14 and Henri at the top, but I ain't got the skill. Okay. So it's understand it's a combination of the two. But in terms of the kit, you can do it. What I've got here on my desktop really is probably top end. I've got a £2,000 Wacom screen, so I'm drawing onto my screen here. Okay, my monitor, this is a 20-inch screen. I can draw on here. You're on a screen above me here. Okay, I've got this is PowerPoint here, but there are options. If you've got an iPad, you can do it on the iPad, okay, if you use Zoom. So if you've got Zoom, you can mirror your iPad on Zoom. You can't do it on Teams, but you can on Zoom. So you could be on here with, a digital pen drawing on here. That's like 400 quid. There's more. As I said, my monitor on my desktop is a Wacom, W-A-C-O-M, a Wacom Cintiq. It's about £2,000 worth. This is the top end one that they do. In my loft, I've got a smaller one that I started with a few years back. You can get them for about 800, but they also do this. So this is just your basic, like USB. Actually, I'm just trying to think if it is USB or if it's, yes, USB connection. Put that to the side of your desk, and you're effectively on here. You have a different stylus, which I have here somewhere, but you're drawing on this. Now, so the challenge with this is that the screen is here, and your pen is over here. Do you know what I mean? So you're drawing on one, but it's like you control a mouse. The cursor on the screen, do you know what I mean? And your mouse on the right hand. Once you've done it for a little while, they sync together very nicely. This is Wacom. There's a lot of Chinese models out there. Again, about the same price. This is probably made in China, but Wacom, I would say, are the number one company in this area. £60.
Yeah, great.
How much money have companies saved not send a salesperson into London to go and meet a customer for a day is 40 quid on a train fare and 20 quid beer and sandwiches, or maybe less or maybe more, okay? But as a piece of technology, I would say this is the simplest, easiest way to do it. If you've got an iPad, you can leverage that. The key then is just learning how to do it. But here's my little offer to you, Mark. If you wanted to do it, I'd be more than happy. It'd be. I might move up from kind of Welsh wizard to Major General Sir Welsh Wizard. If I could teach you to do two things: one, screen share, and then on screen share, get you to feel comfortable writing things out. Do you use a pen and paper though? Do you write down when you're making notes with customers? And
not really, no. I'm very much just sort of speaking.
All in the head. Yeah, but you keep everything up there. But as I say, maybe you've been having to keep things up here because you haven't been taking advantage of the opportunities you've got to be either taking notes or explaining yourself this way. I think in recruitment, there's ways, as I said, whether you're representing a process or whether you do a diagram and say, got to do it again. Yeah. As I say, so many of the things I want to try and explain, I need to be able to kind of share this way. But for instance, what you might also do, let me go here then. You might even say, well, look, there's a typical bell curve. Yeah. So if you're looking to recruit with your customer, you can say, well, look, these are the real top performers here. Yeah. These are the ones you don't really want to pay any attention to. Do you understand what I'm doing here, Mark, with this bell curve? Yeah. And I'd say, well, this is typically where you could say much of the recruitment comes from. Top performers are usually realized or understood to be top performers, so are getting paid well. They're probably getting treated extremely well. So that there's a challenge, however, in recruiting here. Not many of the ones that you recruit from this pool are going to make it across to here. Maybe you could say that there are people can do it, but to make this transition, they're going to need training, they're going to need support, they're going to need kind of good management and so on and so forth. But even here, you can see how a diagram can be used to support your recruitment proposition or your recruitment story. So there's that one. The other one I would look at then would be, just need to do again. I've flipped now back to my mouse. Let me see if I can just do a new. Here we go. Again, you might do. You could do one of these. Yeah. So I've used this in the past. I would say we've got, let's say, sales culture here, and then sales capability here. So this might be about an organization. You say there's an organization, they might have a high sales culture, but low sales capability, like a startup. I mentioned on that post you put up the other day about Softcat, when I went in to see Martin Helliwell a number of years ago, I would have said at that time they had the most amazing sales culture, but they were actually, compared to what I had seen at by the time at Computer Center, I would have said sales capability, they were much smaller. They were all desk-based. They weren't field salespeople. When Martin took me in to see, he said, "Do you want to see our warehouse?" It took me into a room, kind of 12 foot by 20 foot, with just a few empty cardboard boxes there. They were doing drop ship from the manufacturer to the customer. Computer Center had, in my day, had Radlett. They had this huge warehouse. So they ended up doing in Hatfield. Where a Softcat today, I'd probably have to put them here.
Yeah.
Yeah, high sales capability, high sales culture. The challenge is companies can sometimes get to the top and then get a little bit, full of themselves. And what you can see are companies with tremendous sales capability, but poor sales culture. They may be kind of fallen asleep a little bit, maybe a bit of a comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one is, if they stay in there too long, they're going to end up literally with low sales capability, low culture, which I would just typify here as a kind of headstone, not long for this world. So again, you can see through the way that my mind works and many years of training, in my try to explain certain concepts, I find it an awful lot easier with a model. But we can model you up, we can tool you up in no time at all.
My last question for you, Mark, if the listeners were listening today and thinking, do you know what, I really want to adapt to sort of like using shared screen and whiteboarding,
Yes.
etc., because they haven't had the experience, how best can they go about learning these sort of strategies?
Well, no number of ways. If you think about it, how did I learn them? It's trial and error, okay? But I don't think anybody else is necessarily going to be given the time to do it, because I work for myself. As I said, I work for myself and I'm interested in what it is that I'm doing. So purely from what I've shown people here,
yeah,
somebody could go away and they could absolutely work it out. I've given them every piece of a shopping list of what to go, technology, how to be able to do it. But a case of then about how to put it all together, guidance would probably, you could work it out, or you could come to myself. I could show individuals how to do it and show organizations how to do it. I got a couple of books out there, by the way. I mean, this is it's a bit of a primer, but the visual communications book, just kind of going through, because you may want, it all depends how much of a visual communicator you are. You may just need to have some appreciation, like that 4-box diagram that I just drew, how that can be used, what different ways, because I use sales culture, sales capability, but you'll realize that that same 4-box diagram in another form is Gartner's Magic Quadrant, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just this, it's the tool, and then being able to apply it and use it in a certain way. So there's some creativity. If anybody's out there who got a lot of creativity, they would undoubtedly be able to pick this up, what we've covered here, and get on with it. Otherwise, there's loads of stuff on YouTube. I've got a few bits and pieces on Vimeo that they could have a look at. Get in touch with me if there's a professional engagement out there on offer. I'll be very happy to speak with you. Maybe buy a copy of the Visual Communications book. Don't expect too much. It's only £10, but you'll certainly get your money's worth. It's a primer more than anything else. It's not rocket science. And there is another book as well, by the way, Smart Selling book. So I said my skills stack is the visual side, the presentation element, but also my 25, 30 odd years of consultative selling and consulting to organizations, kind of bringing it all together. So hopefully, as I said, you could, if somebody was really interested, I'm hoping that somebody is already, because let me tell you how I would act. If I was watching this and I wanted to do it, I would already have been on Amazon and bought myself one of these. In the seconds following my what is it? And I'm not this is a product placement, I suppose, isn't it? I say in this weird world of whiteboarding, I might even be regarded as an influencer, but there's nobody typically watching. But if somebody saw what I was doing, and thought, how's he doing that? If that was me, at the moment they'd have said it, I'd carry on with the webcast, and I would be online onto Amazon, and I'd have ordered that. So everything's there. But if you want to learn how to do it, you will.
Brilliant, Mark. You've been a fantastic guest. Thanks so much for your time.
And you've been a fantastic host. Okay, fantastic host. I'd say thanks for this today, but also thanks for all of the encouragement and support that you've given to the channel over the last year. Okay, you were like the North Star. You were a guiding light. You were a guiding light. Welsh wizard, guiding light.